Hey everybody, 8-Bit Josh here, and today I'm going to show you some of the basics of habitat building in Planet Zoo Console Edition, as well as some of the more advanced techniques and tricks you can do. This is a fairly simple habitat I made for the giant pandas for another video I made, which is just goes over kind of basic building in general in Planet Zoo. But this video is going to be specific to habitats. Now I am playing this on the PS5, but this should still be helpful to you if you're playing this on Xbox. All the buttons are pretty much in the same spot, so if I'm, hitting square on my button, that would be X on the Xbox controller, and so on. But yeah, so let's first talk about barriers. So you've loaded up the game and you've built a habitat, and you place down a barrier, and you hit L1 or R1 and you get to the animal tab, and you're like, well, why can't I view the animal market? And you can see there's a little pop-up window. You said you need at least one trade center in your zoo. So here we go, we've got a trade center here. So if I go back, you can see both of these options are available to me. When you're considering what animal you want to place, say like I said, I wanted the giant panda. So what you might want to do is you're over here on your menu and you want to go all the way over to the Zoopedia, and it'll automatically take you to the animal that you were on in the animal market. You can see it gives you some general information, but if you hit R1, so this will give you your habitat information that you'll need to know for your giant pandas. You can see under the minimum habitat requirements, this is for one panda. You can see they're based on one adult, 0 juveniles. It requires at least 900 meters squared of habitat space, no climbing requirement, water or deep water requirement, which is swimming. For instance, like penguins have a deep water requirement. Boundary requirement, that's your barrier. Not sure why the name is different here, why they call it boundary requirement. It should be barrier requirement. For pandas, it's a grade 4 and it needs to be climb proof because pandas can climb. So that's going to be kind of your most important one to start off with. You're going to need to place a barrier that's at least grade 4 or higher. Now if you hit X, you can see where it says based on one adults. You can change the amount there, and the game will adjust how much space you need. So if we go 1 juvenile and 2 adults, and you can see it changed the land requirement there. You hit R1 again, this will give you some of the data about pandas. You can see group size is 1 to 10, up to 10 males and up to 10 females. Basically what that means is like each group can have up to 10, but you could have multiple groups. Now there's more information down here. If you're planning to, like, for instance, breed animals, you can check out like the life cycle and all that stuff. But for the purposes of building a habitat, that's not quite as important. It is something to keep in mind though, as far as your habitat size. If your animals produce offspring and then they grow up to full-size adults, then you might run into trouble there. But just for the purpose of this video going over habitats, we're not necessarily going to delve into the breeding as much. Here's all of your research information. Now I'm playing in sandbox right now for the to be able to make this video for you, so everything is already unlocked. But you can see if you were playing like franchise or whatever and you were going through and actually doing research, you could see what you would unlock through research there. And then interspecies enrichment, giant panda doesn't benefit from sharing space with others. Now that doesn't mean you can't put other animals in the same habitat. That just means that they won't gain any benefit from it. But like if we go up to, say, the common warthog, you can see they get a enrichment bonus if they share a habitat with any of these other animals. We're gonna go over here to our barriers menu, and if you hover over the different barrier types, you'll see the pop-up. The brick, for instance, is resistance grade 5, and we already know that the pandas required at least a 4, so the brick is more than acceptable for the pandas. Obviously, like, different animals require different barrier strength. The other thing you want to keep in mind is the height of your barrier, because some animals can climb, like for instance the pandas. Actually, I placed this cherry blossom tree here, and I actually disabled climbing on that, but if I turn that on, they could actually climb up the cherry blossom here, get on the roof, and I don't think that they can jump from that height, but actually we could see. We'll turn that on, click on one of the pandas there, and then we're gonna go to our heat map, which is just the middle pad plus triangle. Bring that up, and if we go to the second option, there's the traversable area. You can see all the areas in blue are traversable, as well as the climbing. So if it has like the green lines on it, that means that they can climb on it. So you can see here the cherry blossom tree, they can climb on it, and then there's some blue space on the top of their little shelter there. If there were any escape points, you would be able to see that it would show it around the edge of the barrier. Since it's pretty tall, they can't escape. But if we edit our barrier here, select the whole barrier, and then we'll just change the height, hold down square, and then left stick like that. Now it's much shorter. If we click on our panda there, go back to our heat map. Actually, they still can't escape. The pandas, they're pretty easy because they don't jump. But if I say, let's say maybe we'll take another one of these trees, we'll duplicate and surface move, and I'll just put it over here by the other side of that shelter. And then you can see the green lines for this other cherry blossom I just placed down. It's kind of, and you can see the red icon a little bit. It's kind of, as we zoom out, you can see it there. It has the tree with the arrow next to it. And then actually, if you hit down on the analog button, it'll show you what each icon means. You know, the paw prints are a walkable escape point. The red icon is also a walkable escape point. Middle icon means that they can climb out, and the third icon means that they can jump out. The other thing you need to keep in mind with your animals are their temperature needs. Some animals, like the pandas, for instance, like a slightly cooler environment. Now, normally, I would say when you want to look at an animal's temperature needs, you could click on, if you're in the Zoopedia, normally under the minimum habitat requirements on the PC version, it includes temperature needs. It seems like if I go to giant forest scorpion, which is an exhibit animal, you can see it has a temperature requirement. For some reason right now, it seems like none of the regular habitat animals have their temperature needs included, but I know just from playing the PC version that the giant panda needs a temperature of between 2 and 29 degrees Celsius. So if we look at the heat map, you can see it's pretty warm in here. And if we click on one of our pandas, you can see temperatures in the orange. This guy's not too happy right now because it's pretty warm in here. So what we do is we're gonna go to our habitat menu, and if you want to filter on the animal that you're working on the habitat for, you could do that just by pressing triangle and then going over here to filters and then species, and then this is the giant panda. Everything that is that will work with the giant panda, but since we're just looking for coolers, we didn't necessarily need to filter on that because there's only a cooler and a heater. So we're going to select a cooler here, and maybe we'll just place it right there. Now with the cooler selected, we'll just go down here to our temperature gauge, and we'll just bump that up until it gets to, again, pandas like between 2 and 29 Celsius. Usually when I'm playing, I like to do something that's kind of in the middle. You know, maybe we'll do like 14-ish. And you can see there that temperature was increasing. Now we're at the current temperature. But the rest of the habitat's still looking pretty hot for our pandas there. So we're just gonna actually, since we know this cooler is at the right temperature, we're just gonna actually duplicate it. So select your cooler, hold down triangle, and then duplicate and surface move. And then that's just gonna make us another cooler there. We'll place it, say, down on that corner. Now when you do duplicate and surface move, the game will actually just continually let you place whatever object you had selected. So we can just actually just place a couple more, and I like to do them around kind of the edges that should cover the whole habitat there. And if we go back to our heat map, then we can see that the whole temperature, or that the whole habitat is at the right temperature. And if we click on one of the pandas, and then you can see habitat, it's all in the green now, temperatures at 100%. The other thing you might need to consider, if you have like water in your habitat like this, the water has its own separate temperature from the habitat. So we go back to our heat map here, you can see that the water is actually a little bit warmer than the rest of the habitat. The way that you can fix that, you bring up your menu here, you go to facilities, and you go down here to utilities, and we're going to go to the water temperature regulator. Now when you select that, you'll see a big old circle that shows you the radius or the area that is affected by this. So any water that is within this darker circle here, the temperature will be regulated by this regulator. But we're just going to go ahead and place this right down here. Now if we'll click on the water temperature regulator, and then we'll go down here to the temperature gauge, and it's already in the right thing, but we'll match it to the rest of the habitat. We'll set it to 14 Celsius. You could also adjust the range. You can see the giant bubble there when we zoom out. So if you have another habitat that's really close to this one, and you don't want that water to be regulated by this specific regulator, you can adjust that so it's much smaller. If you hit R1 over here, you can go to bodies of water, and it'll highlight all of the bodies of water that are affected by that temperature regulator. We only have one, so there's only one to show. If we go back to our heat map, then you can see the water temperature matches the rest of the habitat. We could also go over, if you hit R1, to the water menu, so it highlights the water that's in the habitat. If you hit the right button, it'll show water temperature regulator, and then it'll show you what temperature that water is. Now, speaking of water, if you have, a body of water in your habitat, you're gonna also have to make sure to keep it clean. We go to back to our heat map here. The first menu, this is actually shows you the cleanliness of the water, and that is regulated by this here, is the water treatment. And I'm gonna actually delete it, and I'm gonna let time pass a little bit so that we can see just how dirty this can get. All right, so I let some time pass so that we could let the water get nice and dirty for us. And you can see it looks a lot dirtier. It's very murky looking. Actually, if we click on the water, you can see the cleanliness there is only at 56%, which is not very good. It also upsets the animals. You can see there the cleanliness is affecting them as well. So to fix that, we're going to go back to our facilities here, and we're going to actually place a water treatment facility. And again, if you zoom out, you can see the area that it affects. So any water in that circle will get cleaned by the water treatment. One little trick to keep in mind that not a lot of people realize, because the game doesn't necessarily tell you this, the entire body of water does not need to be inside the circle. The circle just needs to touch the water, even just a little bit. If it's like just barely touching, you can see right there, it will still 100% clean that body of water. So, if you feel like you're like running out of space and you're like, oh man, that body of water is just not in a good spot, I can't get the water treatment close enough, don't worry. As long as it's the circle is touching the body of water, it will clean it. So we have that placed down now, and then you can see, you can get all the information about it. If you see down there, scenery rating 48%. These, if you're playing in anything other than sandbox mode, these facilities do negatively affect the guests. So something to keep in mind when you are placing them, place them out of view of the guests, or place, you know, decorations around them, plants and things like that. Try and make sure that that doesn't affect your guests. And again, if you hit R1, you can see here, you can go down and it'll highlight the bodies of water that are being treated by the water treatment. So if we look at it, we can see it's already clean. It's already at 100%. It's all, the water is nice and crystal clear. And if we click on the panda, the cleanliness has gone up. I think I think the issue right now is I don't have staff. I don't have staff energy degradation disabled, so they're not doing any work. Our keeper's not doing any work because he's tired. But there we go, boom. We just turn off that setting because this is sandbox mode. So now the keeper will go in there and clean up. But yeah, so that's your water needs for your animals. Just making sure that, you know, if the animal requires a hotter environment or a colder environment, you'll want to make sure that you place the temperature regulator, and then as well as either a cooler or a heater. Or if we were in an Arctic biome and we placed down like a giraffe, for instance, you would need to place heaters to make sure that they have the proper temperature. And then the final thing you want to make sure to watch for is the terrain and foliage requirements for the animals. Again, click on our animal there, hit R1, we can go, you can see the terrain, you can see they have a hard shelter and terrain requirement. The space there, this habitat is woefully small. I built this habitat originally for another tutorial video I did, the basic building tutorial, and I had disabled that, but I turned it back on just so you could see, like for instance, this habitat is way too small for them. The other space requirements, the other three there are grayed out because the giant pandas just don't require any of those things. But the ones we're going to want to pay attention to are the terrain distribution. So these are all your different terrain types, and you can see the slider there. You want to make sure that these are all in green. It doesn't matter, you know, how far into that white bar the slider is. As long as it's green, then you're good to go. Giant pandas do have the hard shelter requirement. Now that can be tricky because the more animals you have in your habitat, the more or bigger hard shelter you're gonna need. Since giant pandas, you know, we only have 2 in here, they're good to go. But if you had a habitat with say 10 animals and they required a hard shelter, you would need to place either like a really large shelter or a bunch of small ones. And then the other thing is your plant requirement and coverage. You want to make sure that not only are you placing the appropriate types of plants, but that they have enough coverage. You can see here for the giant pandas, I've got, you know, a basic amount of plants and stuff here, but it's not too crazy. One really, you can see if you go down here, plants in the habitat, it'll show you every plant you have in your habitat. Now, if you were to place one that's not appropriate for them, it would actually have like a big X next to it. So, you know, for instance, let's just pick one of these flowers, place it in the habitat there. You can see there, big red block there, African daisy is incompatible. The game does make it easy for you though. You can actually just delete it from this menu. So you just hit X, bam, it's gone. You can do that with you can just remove all of the plants if you want that way. But you know, if you accidentally place an incompatible plant, you can just quickly delete it. Another great feature is if you click on either the continent or the biome types, the game will automatically bring up the nature tab and it automatically filter on those 3 requirements. So if we go over to our filters, you can already see that the biome taiga and temperate are selected and the continent Asia is selected. So these are all of our plants that we could use for the giant panda. There's a good amount of options here, but again, it's important to keep in mind, you can see at the top right there, the amount of coverage you have. Now the giant pandas, they're actually okay with a lot of coverage. So we could, really load up this habitat if we want to. Yeah, so that's about everything you'll need to know to get your habitats started. So hopefully this helped you out. Make sure to check out, I have a couple other tutorials, a basic building and a path guide to help you out in your Planet Zoo console journey. If there are other tutorials you would like to see, make sure to let me know in the comments. But yeah, that should be everything. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. I will see you all on the next video.